Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Saved you from the feedback squeal then. How are you all? Are you well? Lovely to see you this morning. Well, I can't see you, but lovely for you to see me. Here on the 22nd of February 2016. I don't know. 2021. Wait a minute. Some months have gone past and years. This is Listen with Vobes, who's obviously not quite coherently together today. We're starting a new book, which is exciting. We're starting Neighbourhood by Tickner Edwards, which was written in 19-something or other. It probably does say in here. Should have looked that up, shouldn't I? If I had been anywhere near as good as what the people think I am. They don't. Right, fair enough. It doesn't actually say, which is ridiculous because normally you get some sense of when it was published in the publishing thing. First published 1911. First published 1911. So there we are. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the lovely Julia, to Turbo Stream, to Tool Podge Rog, to Justine Jones, Holly and Co, Ben Reeve. Who else do we have out there? Billabong O'Neill, Dave Ivad, Jen Coley, Lee Lawson, Cooper 68, Anne H, Ed Loud, I think I said, Edward Moulding, and Carol Glue. Lovely to see you, and anybody else who happens to have popped in as well, who I haven't mentioned. Hello. Audrey Forbes, there she is. Marvellous. We're going to start this book. We have read a book by Tickner Edwards. What was it? Something like Long Lift to Margate or something. I can't remember. It was Hard Lift on Southern Roads or Difficult Lift in a Bus with No Wheels. I can't remember. Anyway, this one has got a more sensible title, just Neighbourhood. It's got nothing to do with Ramsay Street, you'll be pleased to know. And in today's show, in my Leo mug, I am drinking coffee, real genuine black coffee of the old coffee beans. Julia's not feeling very well. I'm listening with a stonking headache that has not shifted all day, so I'll be quietly rocking myself and cradling my head in the corner. Poor Julia. I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope that my reading does not exacerbate the head, or indeed the ache in the head. That would be bad. So it's a new book, so we, as usual, we have to read some of the preliminary stuff just to get us in the complete and utter mood. So I'm going to read you the very, very front of this, which says, London Borough of Barnet Library Services. This book should be returned by the latest date stamped on the card. If you wish to keep it longer, you may renew it by post or telephone, once only, or by calling in at the library. Please quote card number, author, title, class number, and date due for return. Reserved books cannot be renewed. Fines will be charged on overdue books. So do not remove these cards. Well, I can tell you there's no card in there. We're talking about... do you remember those days when you could put a little card in there? Say you were borrowing the book. And on the inside page here, startled to see, by the same author, in very tiny little print, it says, The Law of the Honeybee, Oh, Lift Luck on Southern Roads. There we go. That was what it was called. The Bee Master of Warrilow, An Idler in the Wilds. We might have to see if we can find these. And Sidelights of Nature. Anyway, we have a picture of Homeward Bound, which I will show you on the special picture cam. Here we are. These are sheep homeward bound. Somewhere near Burpham, I believe. That's the River Arun. And the book is called Neighbourhood, A Year's Life in and About an English Village by Tickner Edwards, with 8 illustrations. By illustrations, I think he means photographs, because I couldn't find any actual illustrations in it. Now, there is a little introduction. I don't know how long and complicated and whether it's relevant, but I'll attempt to read it. See how we go. Good afternoon, Richard and Julia and everyone, says Philip Hammond and Mary. Nice to see you. Don't say anything too loud. I'll try not to, Lee Lawson says. And Justine Jones, hope you feel better soon. Bad day at Black Rock, says Dave Evad. Was that one of his? Bad day at Black Rock? Right, here we go. Introduction. If you love the quiet of the country, the real quiet, which is not silence at all, but the blending of a myriad sacred, perceptible sounds, you will get it in Windlecombe, heaped measure, pressed down and running over, year in, year out. I believe that Windlecombe is actually Burpham in real life. This is what I've been led to believe, and I believe one of you motley souls out there told me. The village lies just where the Arun breaks the green rampart of the Sussex Downs. To the west, the lowest cottages dwindle almost to the water's brink. Northward and eastward, the highest buildings stand afar off, clear cut against the blue wall of the sky, while in between, filling the deep, steep coombe, church and inn and every kind of dwelling house, big or little, huddle together under their thatch and old red tiles, with the village green in their midst and the thread of white road rippling through them, all up the steep coombe side, till it is lost in a sunny waste of the hills. But there is no way through Windlecombe. For the market town 4 miles off, the road is good enough, and good it remains until it reaches the highest human outpost of the village. But there it suddenly changes to a mere cart track, soon to vanish altogether in the green sward of the down. And therein lies Windlecombe's chiefest blessing. Far away on the great main road, where the wind is southerly, we can hear the motor bugles calling and see pale comet beams careering through the night. But these things come no nearer. At rare intervals, perhaps a stray juggernaut will descend upon us and demand some placid rustic the nearest way to demand of some placid rustic the nearest way to Land's End or Aberdeen, returning disgusted on its tracks when it learns that there is only one road from here to anywhere, and that is the road from whence it came. But these ear-splitting, melodious happenings are few and far between. At all other times, Windlecombe wears the quiet of the hills about it like a garment. The dust of the highway has no soaring ambition to whiten the hedgerows or fill the cottagers' cabbages with grit. It still keeps to its ancient, lowly work of smoothing the path for man and beast, and our children can play in it, unterrorised. Our dogs, old dogs, lie in it at their slumberous ease. How wild and quiet the place is! You can only realise by living in it from year's end to year's end, as has been my own privilege for longer than I care to compute. For how many ages a human settlement has existed in this wooded, sun-flooded cleft of the Downs, it's impossible to hazard a guess. Windlecombe is mentioned in Doomsday, but the stones of the old church proclaim it as belonging to times more distant still. Be that as it may, its clustered roofs and grey church tower have long been reckoned in the traditions of wildlife as part and parcel of the eternal hills. Birds frequent Windlecombe as they haunt the beech woods that hang on the sides of the coombe. They use the rickyards and gardens, the very streets even, as they use the glades in the woodlands or the verges of the brooks. You may come out on a winter's morning and see a heron flapping slowly out of your paddock, or listen to a pheasant's trumpeting on the other side of the hedge. And in the early summer, You can sit on the garden bench and, looking up into the dim elm labyrinth overhead, watch a green woodpecker at work, cutting the hole for his nest straight and true into the heart of the wood. That the thrushes sing all day from Michaelmas to Midsummer's Day, that in June you cannot sleep for the nightingales, that there is never an hour of daylight all the year round when a lark is not carolling against the blue or stormy grey above the village. These things you take as part of your rightful daily fare and are content. But the life of an English village deserves its charm only in part from its intimacy with wild nature and all her wonders and beauties, indispensable as these are to the daily lives of most thinking working men. There is no error so disastrous, humanly speaking, as that which leads a man to seek happiness or sublimity out of the beaten track of his fellows. Neighbourhood, the daily interchange of thought and word and kindly deed, is a necessity for all healthy human life, and the natural medium of all true advancement. And nowhere will you find it of such sturdy growth, rooted in such nourishing yet temperate soil, than the villages of modern England. Not anymore, you won't. Yet here it is necessary to discriminate, to mark conditions. If one's duty towards one's neighbour assumes a real and if one's duty towards one's neighbour assumes a real and prime world's importance in village life, it is equally true that all men are not alike fit to be villagers, nor all villages to be accounted neighbourly. It is an essential part of life, I would describe in these pages, that both the people and the place should depend for existence on the day's work done, as far as it may be, on the soil from which all sprang, and to which all some day must return. The show villages, the little lodging-letting communities that are to be found here and there must be excluded from the argument, nor can men of private means, however modest, find a natural place in the true villager's ranks. Where to all men life is a series of laborious days, tired evenings, dreamless nights, you, lolling in the sunshine or playing at work, or, more fatal still, working at play, will be forever a public anomaly. You will get civility, a patent, dignified tolerance from all, but you will not have a neighbour. Though you may live until your feet have graven their mark into every stone of the place, you will still be a stranger in the land. For my part, such as my work is, I have done it, every stroke, in Windlecombe for half a lifetime and back, and may claim to have fairly worn my village ship. And what is it worth to me? How it is sweetened by daily touch of kind hearts and grip on clean hands? Let me read that again because I have no concept of what he is actually saying. But briefly, let's just see what people are saying out there. Hello all, I'm listening, and lino printing. Oh, right. Oh, well done, Dudley. Yes, Turbo, and completely good vibes. Yes, hello, Dudley Reed in lino printing. Marion Hammond, sympathy goes to Julia. Hope your little guy is giving you some quiet time. Oh, good. Sometimes when I see the text go up, I think, you're telling me that you, A, can't hear me, B, you've fallen asleep, or C, I haven't actually gone live. Well, there we are. That's the coffee demolished. Right, what the hell was he up to? This is very sort of difficult to read. Anyway, for my part, such as my work is, I have done it, every stroke, in Windlecombe for half a lifetime back, and may claim to have fairly worn my village ship. And what is it worth to me? How it is how it is sweetened by daily touch of kind hearts and grip of clean hands, what the country sunshine means filtering through the vine leaves of my workroom window, and what the song of the robin that sits on the ivy-gated post without, or in winter-time, comes fluttering and tappering on the bull's-eye panes for crumbs. How the daily walk in the woods or meadow or by riverside brings its new arrival or revelation of unimagined beauty. And how, above all, the lives... I don't understand what he's saying. Above all, the lives of the quaint, courageous, clever folk in whose midst destiny has thrown me over brim with all the traits human, delectably mortal, divinely out of place. These and many other aspects of villageship I have tried here to set down in plain words and meaning, believing that what has proved of interest and profit to one very human, always erring, often doubting soul, may do the like for others, though journeying by widely sundered tracks. Tickner Edwards, 19, whenever it was. So there we are. That was the introduction. Your dulcet tones are reaching us nicely. Oh, marvellous. Thank you very much. Even through thudding heads. I'm listening intently during my afternoon nap, says Turbo Stream. Yes, I can imagine. Deafened by snoring and interrupted by my vocals. So here we go. Chapter 1, January. I've just been to the house door to take a look at the winter's night. A change is coming. The long frost nears its end. So the old ferryman has told me every morning for a fortnight back, and his perseverance as a prophet has been rewarded at last. As I flung back the heavy oak door, a breath of air struck upon my face, it seemed, as summer. All about me in the grey darkness there was an indescribable stir and awakening of life. The moon no longer stared down out of the black sky, a wicked, venomous, bright beauty on her full-fed, rather supercilious face. Now she wore a scarf of mist upon her brows and looked nun-like, dim-eyed and mild. The stars had lost their cruel glitter. I stepped forth and felt the grass yield beneath my tread, the first time for near a month past, and, as I stood wondering and rejoicing at it all, some night bird lanced by overhead, a note of the same relief and gladness, unmistakable in its shrill, jangling cry. Hard weather in the country has 1,000 enjoyments and interests for those who care to look for them. But when the frost holds relentlessly, week after week, as it has done this January, the grimmer side of things comes obtrusively to the fore. There is too much shadow for light. It is as though you rejoice in the beauty of sunset beams on a wall, and it were the wall of a torture. It's as though you rejoice in the beauty of sunset beams on a wall, and it were the wall of a torture house. I get what he means now. You lie awake at night, and in the depth, quiet stillness, hear the measured footfall of death, a full, reiterated thud on the frozen ground beneath the holly hedge, each sound denoting that yet another roosting thrush or startling has given up the unequal fight. Roaming through the lanes in your warm overcoat and thick-soiled boots, you note the loveliness of the hoar frost, at one step dazzling white, and at the next aglow with prismatic colour. And turning the corner, you come upon the gypsy's tent, and realise that while you lay snug and warm, nothing but that pitiful screen of old rent rags has stood between human beings and the terror of a winter's night. On one of the hardest days, I met the old vicar of Windlecombe and regaled him with the story of how I had just passed along the River Way, not the River Way as in W-E-Y, the River Way. I had passed along the River Way as the tide was falling, How, at full flood, at the pores of the waters, the frost had sheathed the river with ice, and how, when the tide began to go down, this crystal stratum had remained aloft, held up by the myriad reed stems, until at length, loosened by the sunbeams, it had fallen sheet by sheet to the wildest, most ravishing music, each icy tympanum as it fell, ringing a different clear, sweet note. And in return for my word picturing, the old man gave me a story of the same times to match it. How he had just learnt that certain ill-clad, ill-fed children, whom the law compelled to tramp every morning from Rearsdown, a little farming hamlet miles away in the frozen hills, to the nearest school at Windlesham, at Windlecombe, and tramp back again every night, were given a daily penny between the three of them for their midday meal. And how, as often as not, the bread they needed went unbought from the village store because of the lure of the intervening sweet stuff shop. Later, in the red light of sundown, I met those children going home, as I had often met them, plodding one behind the other, heads down to the bitter blast. Each wore a great new woolen muffler and had his pockets stuffed. I knew who had cared for them, and my heart smote me. Somehow the pure austerity of the evening, the radiant light ahead, the white grace of the hills about me, the star-gemmed azure above, no longer brought the old elation. The jingle of my skates as they hung from my arm took a disagreeable sound of fetters. Though I carried them many a time after that, I never put them away without the honest wish that I should use them no more. But luckily these long spells of unremitting frost are rare in our country. Ordinary give and take winter's weather, the alternation of cold and warmth, gloom and sunshine, wind and calm, brings little hardships to any living thing. Country children have a wonderful way of thriving and being happy, even though their diet is mainly bread and dripping and separated milk. As for wildlife, we need expand no commiseration on any creature that can burrow, and while there are berries in the hedgerows and water in the brooks, no bird will come to harm. It is curious to see how nature ekes out her winter supplies, doling out rations, as it were, from day to day. If the whole berry harvest came to ripe maturity at the same season, or were of like attractiveness, it would be squandered and exhausted by the spendthrift, happy-go-lucky hordes of birds long before the winter was through. But many things are designed to prevent this. Under the threat of starvation, all birds will eat berries, but a great proportion of them will only do so as a last resort. At first, it is the hawthorn fruit that goes. The soft flesh of the mayberry will yield to the weakest bill, and the whole crop ripens together in early winter. But even here, nature provides against the risk of immediate waste. That will mean starvation hereafter. The missel thrushes have been given a bad name because each of them takes possession of some well-loathed stretch of hedgerow and spends the whole day in driving off other birds. Yet, on this habit of greedy missel depends not only his own future sustenance, but that of all the rest. For all his agility, he cannot prevent each bird snatching at least enough to keep life going, and while he is so busy, he has himself no chance for gluttony. It's interesting he says that about the missel thrush, because didn't we read him say that? I think it was him in that previous book, Lift Luck, when he was describing them then. I think one of them did, and I'm sure it was him, because I'm just thinking back the books that we read. James Hussey was never that good an observation. Lee Lawson, how awful to hear frozen dead birds fall from the branches. Yes, I know. Don't worry, they're all resting in peace, and they've all been nicely buried. I went out there earlier this morning and did it. Every one of them. Every one that died, I was there with the pickaxe, digging holes in the hard frost, so you don't have to worry. Other berry supplies, such as the privet and the holly, seem to be preserved to the last, because they are universally distasteful, though nourishing at a pinch. But it is the hips or rose berries which provide the best example of nature's way of conserving the lives of birds throughout hard weather against their own foolish squandering instinct. These berries do not ripen at all at once, whether late or early in the season. On every bush the scarlet hips soften in regular, long, drawn-out succession, some being ready in early winter, and some not until well on into the new year. When the hip is ripe, the tenderest beak can get at its viscid fruit, but until it begins to soften, there is hardly a bird that can deal with it. The rose berries, with their scanty but never-failing stores, are really the mainstay of all in hard times. It is doubtful indeed whether the birds that die wholesale in prolonged frosty weather are killed by hunger at all. Probably their death is due rather to thirst. So long as the brooks run, bird life can hold against the bitterest times. But once silence has settled down over the countryside, the only real silence of the year, when all the streams are locked up at their source, then begins the steady footfall under the holly hedge, and you must needs turn from the crimson sunset light upon the wall. I have shut the heavy household door and got back to my table by the workroom fire. The thaw has come in earnest now, and I can hear the drip of melting rime in the garden, far and near. The warm west wind is beginning to sigh down the chimney. The logs simmer and glow, but not with the greedy brightness of frost-bound nights. It is on these long winter evenings that solitude comes into her kitchen. Not into her kitchen, what am I talking about? It's on these long winter evenings that solitude comes into her kingdom. Men are not all made alike, nor is solitude with all a voluntary condition, at least a self-imposed necessity, as it is with me, a something that I must fashion out of my own will and abnegation, weave about me as a tunnel spider weaves her lair. In this ancient house the walls are thick, yet not so thick but that an ear strain will just trip the echo of far-off laughter. But if I but drew that curtain and set the door ajar, I could catch a murmur of voices, like the sound of beehives in summer, and a dozen strides along the stone-flagged passage would yield me what I may not take for hours to come, tried and meet companionship, the flinty... Sorry, this is such old-fashioned way of writing. It's also quite an old-fashioned way of reading. If I but drew the curtain and set the door ajar, I could catch a murmur of voices like the sound of beehives in summer dark, and a dozen strides along the stone-flagged passage would yield me what I may not take for hours to come, tried and meet companionship, the flint and steel play of banded jest, my own to behold if I can in brisk exchange of nerving heart and thought. But these things in their season. Mine now is to dip the grey goose quill, to grid up for a long tramp over the foolscap country before me, that trackless white desert where I must lay a trail to be followed, whether by many or few or none, or with what pleasure or weariness I may certainly know. I may never certainly know. Oh, he's talking about writing. Sorry, he's talking about writing. I get it now. For the writer is like a sower, that is ever sowing and passing on. He can seldom do more than take a hurried, fleeting shoulder glimpse at the harvest behind him, nor see who reaps, if haply it be reaped at all. Are you still with me? You still there? Still coping? I am struggling, but there's bits of it which are really good, and other bits is like, I'm sorry, what? Scratching away in the cosy fireside quiet of the old room, there comes to me at length a sound from the chimney corner to which I must needs listen. No matter what twist or quirk of syntax holds me in thrall. You often hear aged country folk complain that the crickets no longer sing on the hearth, as they used to do in their childhood. My own crickets have always seemed to sing blithely enough, too blithely at times, to help one forward with a difficult task. But I had always been glad to accept the statement as one more proof of the decadence of modern times. Hobnobbing one winter's evening, however, with the old ferryman in his riverside den, and noting how merrily the crickets were chirping in his chimney corner, I wondered to hear him give way to this same lament. Then, for the first time, I realised that not the crickets, but his old ears were at fault. Though the little smoke-blackened cabin rang with their music, the old man, who would on the loudest night have heard the ferry call from the other side of the water instantly, failed now to grip the high-pitched sound, and this set me to philosophising. When the crickets ceased to pipe in my own chimney corner, then, and not till then, I will admit that I am growing old. But though we speak of the chirp or pipe of the cricket and grasshopper, it is well to remember that neither these nor any other insect possess a true voice. It would be nearer the fact to call the cricket a fiddler than a piper, for it is by sitting and drawing the corrugated rib of his wing case to and fro over the sharp edge of the wing beneath that his shrill note is developed. And it is only the male cricket who can chirp. The female carries upon her no trace of any fiddling contrivance. When all things were made, and made in couples, on the females of the least, when all things were made and made in couples, on the females of at least one numerous species, it is pleasant to remark a significant and commendable silence was imposed. Solitude by a fireside in an old country dwelling, the murmurous night without, and within, the steady clear glow of candles made by your own hands, out of wax from your own hives, it would be strange if the evening's work failed to get itself done cleverly and betimes. Pleasant as it is to all penmen to be achieving, there is no depth of satisfaction like leaving off. Then, not to return incontinently to the sober, colour-fast world of fact, but to stay in your dream country, idling away by the roadside, is one of the great compensations of this most exacting lives. Your tale is done. You have scrawled the end at the bottom of the sheet, and thrown it with the others. You have turned your chair to the fire, put up your slippered feet on the andiron, and have filled your most comfortable pipe. The end it is, in truth, for all who read the tale. But for you there will never be an end, just as there will never be a beginning to it. Unbidden now, and not to be gainsaid, even if you had the mind, your dream children live on in the town and country nook that you've made for them. Live on, increase and multiply, finish their peck of dirt, add to the world's store of either of folly or sanctity. Come to their graves at last, each by his own exorable road, and each leaving the seed of the tale behind. Is it 10 to yet? To the inevitable reader, when, after much water spilling and crackling of crowns, Jack has got his Jill, and the wedding bells are lin-lan lonning behind the dropped curtain, there is a satisfaction of certainty that so much love, and one pair of hearts at least, are safe from further chance and change in the whirligig of life. But to the teller of the tale there is no such assurance. Just as his dream children came out of an immortality that he did not devise, so will they persist through an eternity not of his controlling, and forever they will be subject to the same odds of bliss or disaster as any stranger that may pass his door. Yet, being only human, he will nevertheless go on with his tales in the secret hope that Jove may be caught napping, and a little heaven be brought down to earth before its allotted time. For living in the world of law and order, where even omnipotent may not deny to every cause its outcome, is too realistically like camping under fire. The old fatalists had peace of mind because they believed it availed nothing to crouch when the bullet screamed overhead, nor even to dodge a spent shot. But to take one's stand in the face of a myriad cross-purposes and side issues of an orderly universe needs a vastly different temper. Perhaps it is just the secret longing of all hearts to have at least a little make-believe certitude, if nowhere else but in the pages of a story by which the art of fiction so hugely thrives. I put out the candles, each shining under its little red umbrella of paper, the better to see the joyous colours of the fire. When drab thoughts come, those night birds of sombre feather, the pure untinctured glow from well-kindled logs, has a wonderful way of settling them to flight. Let unassailable optimism make his fire of coals. For him the questioning, craving, often craven heart, there is no warmth like that from seasoned timber. Coals, with their dynamic energy, their superfluity of smoke, their sudden incongruous jets of flame, seem to be forever insisting on facts that you would fain forget a while, much as you may admire and depend on them, the progress of competition of an outer life. But wood fires serve to draw the mind away from modernism in all its phases, so that you burn the right kind of wood. I can see why this book wasn't borrowed very often. So you can burn the right kind of wood, and this is important. Your fireside thoughts may never leave the realm of cheery retrospect. Good seasons logged of beech or ash are the best. Oak has no half moods. It must either be a furnace or unapproachable, or smoulder away in dead full embers. Elm gives poor comfort to the slight damp it appalls it. Poplar is a charity fuel. Burn it will indeed to good purpose, but too explosively. There is no rest by a fire of poplar. One must be forever treading out or parrying the vagrant sparks. Wonder why they call them good old days. Yes, with the thickness of this book, Richard is going to be to get to the... What? With the thickness of this book, is Richard going to get to the E end even? I sense another new book this week. We will get to the end of chapter 1 even. Where is the end of chapter 1? I mean, he seems to be taking a long time saying pretty much he's sitting there by the fire listening to the crickets and the birds, and spring is coming. He wrote so well in Lift Luck on Southern Roads, the swine. He's lulled us into this, where he's just talking about... Anyway, a joyous colour it is, the wavering amber light that fills the old room now from the piled-up beechen logs. Joyous, yet having a sedate ruminative tinge about it, like old travellers' tales of ancient times. Nor does the colour appeal only to the eye. There seems to be a fragrance in it. That this is no mere conceit, but simple fact. I was strangely reminded when I blew the candles out, and from the smouldering wicks 2 long white ribbons of vapour were borne away on the draught. The fragrance of the smoking wax brought up a picture of the summer nights when the bees lay close to fashion it. Round about the cluster in the pent-up hive were thousands of little vats of brewing honey, each giving off a stream that was the life spirit of clover fields and blue borage, and sainfoin, which spreads from the hills with rose-red light. All these mingled scents had got into the nature of the wax, and now they were given off again in sweet-smelling vapour, such a fragrance as you may rarely chance upon in certain foreign churches where the old ordinances yet prevail and the candles are still made from the pure product of the hives. And it is the same with burning logs. Each kind of wood has its own essential odour, which pervades the room as though it were soul and body with the light. You cannot separate the two. No riding down of fancy will disassociate the flickering gypsy gold of the embers and the perfume of the simmering bark. If these do not fill your mind with memories of the green twilight of woodlands, of hours spent in leafy shadows of forest glades, then you are not made for country fireside, and were happier hobnobbing with modernity by his sooty coal-fed hearth. I like it, but I think it's probably hard to read aloud. What a shame! I had been looking forward to another of. Yes, it is a very inward-looking book, isn't it? And it is very hard to get your mouth around all those descriptive words. Well, my mouth. Anyway, we'll persevere to the end. See how we do. Anyway, this is part 2. My glasses have gone astray. Have you noticed how astray they've gone? I need to get new glasses. These are so limp now. It's going to be a long year. Says, yeah. Well, we may. Did this book come before the lift? I think it did. I think this is like one of those. You know, if you went to a what do you call it, creative writing class, somebody would come there and go, yes, very good, but red line. Yes, we need to just, get on with it. Get on with it. It's not difficult to understand why indoor work is at most times tolerable in cities, fair weather or foul. In the cities, earth and sky have long been driven out of their ancient comradeship. Stifled by pavements and masonry, the earth cannot feel the touch of the sunbeams, nor the air enrich itself with the breath of the soil. The old glad interchange is prevented at all. The old glad interchange is prevented at all points. There is no lure in the sunshine, no siren voice in the gale. Summer rain does not call you out into the open to share the joy of it with the drinking grass and leaves. Amidst your dead impenetrable bricks and mortar, you can plod on with your scribbling or figuring without a heart stir. No vine leaf will tap at your window, no lily of the field taunt your industry, nor song of skylark dissipate your dreams. But indoor work, carried on in a village deep in the green heart of some beautiful countryside, is on an entirely different plane. At times, perhaps, it becomes the hardest work in the world. With one lavish hand, life gives you the things most necessary for close, unremitting application, and with the other, she ruthlessly sets all manner of obstacles in your path. On such a day as now, dawned crystal clear over Windlecombe, with the first warm wind of the year blowing new life into everything, there was no stopping indoors for me. I got down to my work punctually, though, even if a little before the wonted time. But good resolutions make no headway against such odds. The southwest wind boomed merrily in the elm tops. The sunbeams riddled my old house through and through. Out in the garden, robins and thrushes had formed themselves into a grand orchestra, and when the breeze lulled for a moment, I could hear the larks singing far overhead as though it were a summer's day. An hour of half-hearted tinkering saw my fortitude break like a mill dam. 5 minutes later I had shut the house door behind me and was off up the village street, gulping deep draughts of the sweet morning air. I chose the path that led down to the downs. Mounting the steep chalky track in the arms of the gale, with the misty green heights looming up before me against the blue of the winter's morning, one fact was borne upon me at every step. Though I must needs write winter, it's this must needs that always gets me, because it's such an old-fashioned phrase that must needs, one must needs. Such a peculiar phrase. One must needs write, in other words, I must do, I suppose what we would say. Though I must needs write winter, for January was but 3 parts done. I guess he's talking about this book. It was no longer winter, but spring. A few days' sunny warmth had worked what seemed like a miracle. In the hedges and the trees the buds were swelling, the birds were pairing, young green spears of grass showed underfoot. Across the path clouds of midges danced in the sunshine. I heard the first low love croon of a wood dove, and when I stopped for breath in the lee of the hazel copse, there drifted out upon me a song never yet heard on winter's day, the mellow voice of a blackbird calling for a mate. But the more we study nature out of doors, the more we come to disbelieve. But the more we study winter out of doors, the more we come to disbelieve in winter altogether. Winter is in truth a myth. From the moment the old year's leaves are down, the earth is in vigorous preparation for the new year's life and growth. Nature lies by quietly enough. Hang on, I've got to get the sentence in my head. Nature lies quietly enough during the cold spells, but each awakening is stronger and a more joyous one. While they last, the long frosts seem to hold all the life of things suspended. Yet, with every return of the southwest wind, it is easy to see that this is not really so. Though the visible sunbeams have had no power for progress, those stored in the earth have been slowly and steadily at work. And when the thaw comes, nature seems to take up the slack of the year in one tremendous forward pull. I reached the crest of Windle Down and made over the springy, dew-soaked grass, content to go wherever the tearing wind would drive me. The long billowing curves of the hills stretched away on all sides until they lost themselves in the distant violet haze. Here and there flocks of sheep made a grey patch in the sunlit solitude, and a low clamour of bells was in the air, blent with the unending song of larks. On the coombe sides the gorse spread its darker green, and near at hand I could make out its gold buds already bursting under a touch of sunbeams. The next hill before me was topped with the ring of fencing, near which stood a solitary figure cut against the tender blue of the north. Shepherding on the South Downs is a hereditary family calling, and old George Artlett, the shepherd at Windlecombe Farm, had trained up at least 2 of his 4 sons to follow his own tranquil steps. In village life, though the essence of neighbourliness is that it must be exercised impartially to one and all, worthy or unworthy, there are ever some about you with whom the daily traffic of genial word and deed comes more aptly than with the rest. In all the years I have known the Artlets, there have been scarce a day when I had not encountered one or other of the sturdy clan and In all the years I had known the Artlets, there had been scarce a day when I had not encountered one or other of that sturdy clan, and generally to my profit. If it was not the old shepherd himself placidly trailing along in the rear of his flock with his shining crook, it was young George, the 50-year-old under-shepherd, his pocket bulged out with a Bible, or Dewey, the shepherd boy, or John, the sporting handyman, tramping off to covert with his pack of mongrels, or quaint Mistress Artlet carrying her household basket to and fro from the shop, or of Tom Artlet, the singing ploughman, as he was called in the neighbouring market town. I got a glimpse sometimes in the early grey of the morning, or more often the late afternoon, as he journeyed between home and farm. He ploughed his acre a day conscientiously, working the usual 12 miles in the doing of it all, and all the while his rich, powerful voice made the hills about him echo with the songs he loved. The hills are alive with the sound of music, he said, as the Germans came rushing down with their bayonets fixed. I'm sorry, Julie Andrews didn't write that. Oh, it's 10-2. It's 10-2. Why he sang these songs and why young George's pocket always bulged would have been at once evident to you if you had looked out of the window with me any Sunday morning about 8 o'clock. Punctually at that hour, the two brothers strode by in their scarlet jerseys and blue braided coats on their way to town. And there they passed a 7th day, more toilsome than all the other 6th, coming home at nightfall, hoarse and weary, yet plainly as any happy man could be. What were they doing? We will find out tomorrow when we read a bit more of this long-winded and peculiar book. But it's quite poetic. I quite like it. I do quite like that. If only I could read it. I mean, it'll take me a bit of time to get into his phraseology, I think, and also stop my eyes dancing about. Blent, Oriental pronunciation of a place near Wembley. Oh, thanks. It's 10-2, yes. Old version of blended, as Lee said, says Julia. Blent. Philip Larkin used that word. Never knew what it meant. Anyone? Blent. Blended. Yes, it's like the past participle of to blend. It's been blent. Blended. Yes. Like lent and lended. When I leant against the wall, was I lended? No, that's a different meaning. A silly fool. Anyway, there we are. It's we've done, but I think we'll give it a bit more try, because actually I mean I know he's taking his time, and I read it really badly and I'm struggling there. My eyes were darting about a bit. I've only got the one eye, and sometimes, you know, it's not easy. Some days I'm better than others and I get into the flow, and I apologise if it's a bit shite, but I quite like that sort of gentle. I like the words. I do like the words and the phrases that he uses. I think he's a very good author. I mean, he does take a bit of time. And so let's see how we do. I enjoy the story, but one really must concentrate to read it out aloud. It is a mouthful. It is, yes. I need to probably go slower, and but I'd like discovering these different words, like blent. I think that's very good. Anyway, it's long-winded, that last passage on the Downs was well described. Exactly, I do like that. Don't scorn the old ways of writing. It's part of our heritage. Do preserve with persevere. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, though. That's exactly what I'm saying. it does take everybody time to sort of. You're right, it's part of our heritage, of course it is, but it just takes you time to get into it because when you read to an audience. I mean, I don't know how many of you actually do this. Read to an audience. You're aware that you want this to be entertaining and engaging, and you're desperate to see that. And if you're, as a performer, you're struggling with it, you know that it can't be, because we've all seen people who struggle with things, especially reading, and it can be as dull as bloody dishwater, and then you feel embarrassed for the reader, and then the whole experience is not an enjoyable experience, because then it no longer becomes about the words on the page, it becomes about the performance. And so, yes. So, I've just said that that's what I'm going to do. Don't throw me out in the gutter yet. I said I'm going to persevere with it. We'll see how it goes. So don't jump down my throat. Anyway, so there we are. I will catch you all on. I might have to read the chapter beforehand before I read it if I can. I'm not sure how, it all depends on time. But anyway, there we go. I did my best. We'll persevere. I will see you next time. Take care. And until next time, bye for now.